Of course, it near about dark and the recoil and all that kind of stuff. All I had really to go on was my hearing, and so I heard him as he run off down that hill there. He run away from the scrape, went straight down the hill. I heard him, and then I didn't hear nothing. And I said, oh goodness, because I had intended to shoot him right at the base of the neck so he'd be laying right there in the trail. And so I was like, now I got to go get down and go try to find this deer and all that, because I know I done walloped the fire out of him and all that. So, long story short, I got down and rigged around there, and it's a miracle with me. It's a miracle that I have a light that works. I just gonna tell you, I have the worst luck with flashlights as anybody. Headlamps, you name it. I carry about 5 of them because 4 of them ain't gonna come on. And so I finally got me a light that worked good, and I eased off down there. And you know how it is in the dark. It was hard enough for me to try to figure out there wasn't no exact trail that he came down. He just had busted out of that trail in the thicket, and it was out in them oak leaves out there. So I was looking around. I kind of really wanted to find the blood and get on the blood, find him, and all. And so I looked for, I don't know, probably 10 minutes, and I really didn't pick up the blood trail at all. But I had marked pretty good where I heard last sound, and I took my light. My light was actually pretty good that evening. I took my light and I said, I'm going to go down here to where I actually last heard him. And of course, I'm shining on the ground trying to pick up the blood and all. I didn't want to have to come back next morning and just try to find that deer. Of course, it would have been a good spot. But I took off down through there, and I don't know. I bet I can go 40 yards down in there, and I looked. I could see his belly shining and all. And so when I got down to him, it's always interesting when you pick up one you shot right at dusk dark. You don't exactly know all the time how big he is. And I was on the club I was hunting on. It was not really strictly regulated, but your buck counted. In other words, that was your buck, and so this was my buck for that particular tract of ground. And I sure didn't want to waste it, but I got down there, and he turned out to be a big old wide 9 point. He he had something. He had like a 19-inch inside spread. He was actually he was probably only 3.5. He'd have been a really good buck in about 2 years. But back then we didn't know as much about them as everybody does with this man. There's kids now that kill bigger deer than I'd ever seen, and that comes from a lot of different things. That comes from a management standpoint and all that. But back to what this whole tale has to do with the RUT is, if you can find one of those community scrapes, and by all means you'll know it. I mean, the minute you walk up there and look in it, uh, everything, it's like you took 3 or 4 smaller scrapes and just put them all together in one patch. The scrape itself, the scrape portion of ground will be at least a sheet of plywood big. And of course, it's usually always got a good overhanging limb or two. And if you can ever find those on the areas that you're hunting, they are consistent buck producers year after year after year. And until something changes, till they cut the timber, or if they were growing soybeans in the field and all that. So that's what I focus on during the rut. Is rut hunting becomes pretty easy to me because I focus on just what we've talked about in these two segments. Um, you got to look at the overall picture, and that is the buck rubs that you encounter. I used to try to hunt like scent post type rubs, big, huge rubs, but I had a little 6 pointer destroy that theory for me, and so I don't lean. Of course, it takes a big deer to make big sign, you know, but I don't focus as much on it. I'm aware of it, but I focus on during hunting the rut. I focus on anywhere that concentrates the does because that's what you essentially are hunting. The more does you got around you, the more likely one of them's going to be coming in season. The more likely that one of them's dragging a buck along. So I hunt anywhere that's a concentration of does. I hunt in places that I can see because the more terrain you can observe, the more likelihood you are of seeing a deer that's chasing a doe or something like that. And if they're in that area, they're usually going to stay in that area for at least 48 hours. You got a couple days that you can move. So once again, you hunt concentration of does, hunt where you can see, and then hunt the community scrapes. And like I said, Gene Wenzel, I believe, coined the term community scrapes. And what it is it's just a scrape that's shared by the bulk of the male deer in the area. And so that's just three things you can think about. And I hate to stress it too much, but once again, for those that don't understand, what you need to do is hunt concentration of does. Hunt where you can see. And if you choose to hunt over a scrape, make sure it's a community type scrape. And as far as the rest of the rut, well, it'll just take care of itself, it seems like. Well, that's just something for y'all to think about. Till later, y'all have safe time in the woods.